Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 406.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we are going to talk about a subject that I think is near and dear to many of our hearts. We're going to talk about, well, your kids, or maybe even your own future, depending on how young you are, because you could be thinking to yourself, man, I would love to go to college, but man, I would love for my kids to go to college, but how on earth is that ever going to happen? Now, wouldn't you happen to know that I found a guy who's made it his business to help you make sure that happens? I think that's amazing because when it comes to entrepreneurs, well, we can figure out a way to solve other people's problems and make a business around it. And I think that's what's exciting. So I have with me today none other than Brad Baldridge. Many of you may know him from his podcast, Taming the High Cost of College. He is also a college planning specialist as well as a financial planner. And I think what's going to happen for some of you today is you might actually find that path because, I mean, we all know that an investment in education pays the best interest. So let's make sure that we are ready to learn, that we are ready to listen, and most importantly, able to take action. Let's listen and understand how we can tame the high cost of college with none other than Brad Baldridge. Brad, you there?
I am here.
Thanks for being here. I am glad that you are here. You have a tough job, my friend.
I do. It's exciting and challenging all at the same time.
Got it. All right, so this being your first time here, I have to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Hulk, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, occasionally as entrepreneurs, we get dressed up, we put on our capes and tights, and we go out there and use our special skills and abilities to, well, help people with our skills and abilities and increase the quality of their life. However, also like superheroes, entrepreneurs have a beginning. I mean, if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a college student trying to make the months work together, and he was out there taking some photos to bring, money into the house. So my question to you is as follows. Before your podcast, before deciding that you were going to be a college planning specialist, before financial planning, before all of these things, what we want to know, Brad, is who is Brad Baldridge?
Wow. So I guess it all started, I went to college and got the corporate job as everybody was supposed to do. And that lasted about 5 years. And in those 5 years, I started doing a number of different things on the side, including real estate for a while. And that led me to financial planning. And then part-time financial planning led me to full-time financial planning. And then walked away from corporate and haven't looked back. So the short answer is I, didn't want to sit in that cubicle day in and day out for 20 or 30 or 40. So I found an alternate path.
Did you say 20 or 30 or 40? Did you mean years? Because you definitely didn't mean hours a week.
No. No, I meant years.
Got it. So where did this... So let's talk about it for a second. When you say you went to college, and then can I make the assumption that when you were younger, your mom, dad, parents, the environment, the consensus was, you need to go to school, get good grades, and end up with a job? Was that the original environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was my path, and I was, my parents, my mom had some college, but my dad did not. And I went off for my engineering degree because that's what I was interested in. And, had I worked at a corporation that wasn't quite so backwards, I might have stayed in engineering. But I got into a corporation where there was no such thing as flex time, and you're punching a clock and doing all kinds of things that it felt very restricting, and I didn't enjoy it. And I found that entrepreneurship, I could do my own thing on my own schedule, and decided to go that route instead.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said that you found a corporation that was backwards. Are you trying to say that there's some corporation out there isn't?
Well, no, not exactly. I'm
Okay.
saying that of the bad corporations, this one was probably the worst
Yeah, I see.
in
Got it.
many regards. And again, that was a long time ago, and land far away, so to speak.
Yeah, I know. It does feel that way. It does feel that way. Okay, so you didn't wake up one morning there, or did you wake up just, you didn't wake up and go, I know, I'm going to start a business. That was not the path. That was not the transition. There were a number of things that led you to where you are today. So what would you say, what was that path? What did that look like? How did you one day go, okay, discover, if you will, your superhero ability to help people when it comes to understanding how to tame the high cost of college?
Right. Okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, I got involved in real estate kind of part-time while I was working, and had some success and some, had a couple failures too, where why did I ever do that? And
I know nothing about that. No, never.
and then that led me to financial planning, and I just got involved in it part-time. And this was back more, 20 some years ago now. So it was a much different landscape at the time. And I decided to get some of the financial planning licenses and got involved in that just part-time, because I was learning about it and it was interesting to me. And then I started teaching other people about it and realized that a lot of people needed the help. And then, so I started actually, started a business part-time doing financial planning. And then as that got more successful and got very disenchanted with my corporate work, I decided to move to full-time financial planning.
Okay. And when you were a financial planner, go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So my strength has always been taking the complex things around things like financial planning and college planning and teaching people kind of the essence of what they need to know without bogging them down with all the jargon and all the detail. And just, again, kind of translating it from the experts to, this is an action plan that you need to take advantage of. You don't need to understand all the details, but here's what you need to do and get to work on this.
Got it. So if I understand correctly, the financial planning started as a part-time thing, but eventually became a full-time thing because you decided to let go of the corporate job. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then there's a good conversation right there. It's what I tend to call the superhero moment. It's that moment where you realize, hey, like you said, that people needed the help and you could help them. However, there's a number of people who are listening who have realized that they have a superhero ability. However, they haven't yet developed the courage to separate from the familiar, the accepted, the corporate job, if you will. So my question becomes, where did you find the courage to go, all right, I'm going to do this on my own? And this is even more important if you were already married or had a family, etc., when that courage moment hit.
Right. Well, and I guess I had the advantage that I was just 5 years out of college and I was not married and I didn't have a lot of obligations.
Okay.
I had, at the time I was collecting, 12-ish rent checks and had duplexes and single families and a lot going on. And then,
got it.
And it was pretty easy for me to say, well, I don't have a lot to lose. And if it doesn't work out, I can go back to work at any time. And so I had the advantage of not having large obligations as far as family and other things.
Okay, hold on. But you said something and you said it really quickly. And I know somebody in our audience was like, what did he just say? Did I hear you correctly that 5 years post college, You had 12 rental properties?
Well, more like 10 because some of them were duplexes so I got 2 rent checks from the same building.
Yes, totally understood. Totally understood. So you had 12 units. Let's just say 12 units, not necessarily properties,
Yes.
but 12 units post college already. And okay, so this is good. I like where this is headed. And that gave you I'll call it the confidence, the freedom, the flexibility to make a different choice.
Right. Absolutely.
Interesting. All right. Now, you do know that a number of people want to know, how on earth did you do that so quickly after college? Because there are some who are more than 5 years post-college and still haven't figured out how to get the first one.
Right. Well, and again, I don't know a lot about real estate anymore. As I got married and launched my financial planning business, I realized that I needed to focus on that. And I've liquidated all my rentals over the last, it's probably been at least 12, 15 years since I've had those rental properties. But
Got it.
At the time, I was able to get involved in VA foreclosures
Got it.
and other strategies. And I quite literally, I don't know if you've heard the name Charles Givens. But he was a real estate guy, out there long time ago, back when you had to go to the hotel and listen to the
There was no podcast.
And then when you bought the course, they gave you a ring binder and a bunch of, I think it might have been audio tapes at the time. And I learned what I could from the experts I had around, and then I just jumped in and did it.
Got it. And for those of you listening, if you're wondering, an audio tape is what happened. That was before the CD, and it was before there were no MP3s, there were no CDs. We actually went to the store, physical tapes. I know that might sound foreign to you, but it's what we did. Okay, I got it. So then, how do you transition? What did that look like? What was that transition? The transition for some people feels I'll say rough. They're used to one environment. You show up, you get paid for being there, and now you're transitioning from show up to get paid to be there to, oh man, if I don't produce something, I don't eat. What was that transition like for you?
It was rocky, and it still is rocky. Obviously, as my business grows and you start adding employees and things like that, and now the situation, the nuts get bigger. And, but yeah, there were times when, I was happy that I had the real estate income coming in because the financial planning was a slow road even back then. And I think financial planning is even harder to break into now, where, just the way things are structured and the rules and regulations. So, a young person today getting into financial planning really probably would join a firm. I started essentially my own practice,
right,
from scratch, where now you'd probably be much better off to, again, in my opinion, mentor with somebody, find someone that wants to retire, or other avenues along those lines.
Well, you're bringing up a great point, because when you go out there to either start a business or plan something like college, you're already faced with a number of obligations that exist that don't exactly go away suddenly because you're like, hey, we want to make this new thing you want to do easy. So, and I'm sure you get this question all the time, but how does a parent, in their situation right now, go, you know what, I've already got my mortgage, I've already got all these other things going on, and now I have to plan for college too? Like, how are they going to make that happen when just how? It's always an interesting question. I know you've got an answer though.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the challenge: is most parents today, even if they went to college themselves, the costs were reasonable. And, when I went to college, I was able to work hard for a summer job, take a small loan, and everything came together. And my parents helped, they provided a place for me to sleep when I went home and all that kind of stuff, and fed me. And financially, they contributed a little bit here and there. And when I ran out of money at the end of the year, they'd send me grocery money so I could finish the semester and that kind of stuff. But it was possible that you could kind of deal it yourself. Today, with the price of colleges, the typical state school is 25,000. There's not a lot of students out there that are going to just, with a summer job, cover college. And loans aren't going to be enough either. So there's been a big transition to where now mom and dad are expected to help participate, either borrow the money or provide the money, save the money. It doesn't really matter how they participate. But especially if the parent has a substantial income. And when I say, not substantial, but even over middle class and above, if you've got that type of income, then you're expected to contribute and participate. And again, it's not that you have to, right? Ultimately, you can say, I don't care about college, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that's certainly kind of the process. So now what we would do is you kind of divide college planning into what I call early stage planning and late stage planning. So early stage planning is I've got a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, whatever it is, and college is coming, and I should probably plan and prepare. I should maybe save some money or set up a 529 or do whatever I need to do in order to have college paid for, or at least a portion paid for when we get there. Then we roll into what I call late stage college planning, which is you got a high school sophomore or junior or senior, and now it's like, well, okay, we're here. You may have done a great job saving, you may have done nothing, but either way, you've got to do late stage planning, which is visiting the schools and figuring out your testing and determining how much of a nest egg you have and determining how much you can afford to spend and making the whole plan come together. Now, if you were a diligent saver and you have a big pot of money, that process will be a little easier. If you don't, you're still going to have to do it. I've had very few parents come to me, especially middle income and up, who say, oh, college is too expensive, we decided to cancel it. It's going to happen. Now the question is, how do you do it most efficiently? How do you get the biggest bang for your buck? And how do you, in the end, get what you need, whether it's a college degree or tech school or whatever it is, in the most efficient manner possible? Because again, it's almost a foregone conclusion for many families that it's going to happen. We're just going to have to figure out, again, how to make it work.
Okay, so let me, if I can play counterpoint, devil's advocate for a moment. What you said there was a transition in the assumption of who was going to pay for and how much help was going to be provided. Why? What's wrong with just saying, you know what, if you're gonna go, you've got to pay for it? Why does that assumption have to change? Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you though is, where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do to get some of your time back is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Right. Well, and again, you can say that to your student. In the past, though, you were able to get enough aid that it was logistically possible for a student to make it come together. But if you take a family, let's say they earn $100,000 a year, they're not going to qualify for many grants and that type of thing. So depending on what state you're in, but around here, state schools are, 17, 18,000 all in. And in many states, it's more like 20, 25. And these are the lower cost state schools. Well, the most a student can borrow is $5,500. So the student borrows $5,500.
There's a gap. Okay.
Right. They work hard. summers and weekends, and they waitress and they, mow lawns and they do whatever it is that they can do. And they're saying, well, geez, I'm $10,000 short and I just can't make it come together. So one option, of course, is, well, you delay school, you go out and work and save. But the logistics of that, to spend 10 years to get your degree when you could get it done in 4, you're much more valuable, and your ability to earn is much better on the backside. So if you say, well, if I go get my degree and then start working somewhere for $50,000 a year, if I could just live at home and live like a college student, I could pay back a lot of loans with $50,000 a year. Now, the caveat to that is most college students, when they graduate, don't live like college students anymore. They run out and get an apartment and get a new car, and their lifestyle immediately sucks up whatever their starting wages are. That's the challenge with that math, right? Is you have to be diligent and say, when I was in college, I could room and board and all that stuff was $10,000 a year. Now that I'm out of college, can I still have room and board and everything at $10,000 a year? And if you did that, well, then you'd have another, after taxes, maybe another $25,000 to contribute to paying down loans. But again, most graduates don't do that. They run out and buy a car. They get an apartment where they don't have 4 roommates because they're tired of that. They learn how to spend all the money they've earned.
Right. Okay, but so when it comes to, I guess, is there some sort of, I know that, like, my wife and myself even, I love a great deal. I go bargain hunting all the time. As a real estate guy, I'm always negotiating something. And instead of just figuring out a way to make that high number work, is there a way to, I don't know, negotiate to make that number be less for us, without having to do that? Go ahead.
Okay, well, the number I talked to you about is the negotiated number. I mean, if you decide to pay full price to Harvard, we're talking $70,000 a year.
I see.
Right. So realistically, if you go to a state school, I mean, there's options, right? You could go to a local community college. Depending on your state, it could be anywhere from nearly free to $5,000 or $10,000. Live at home, keep your costs really low. But again, the typical parent that's dealing with college, especially the ones that I'm meeting, they want to make it work. They want their kids to have that college experience. They want them to go spend 4 years on a college campus and do the college thing. And they're willing to pay for it, or maybe to some extent pay for it, right? They just don't want to do it. They want to do it wisely instead of foolishly.
They want to pay for it, but not for the rest of their life, maybe.
Exactly.
Totally understood. But okay, so let me ask you this. In your research, is it because you said a word that I was like, I think that was the operative word. They're willing to pay for the college experience. Does it again, I'm an real estate business guy. I think about return on investment. Is it there still at the higher number? Because I know that there's a point at which if I have to invest so much money in a particular property where I go, you know what? It's a property. It's wonderful. But now the return gets so low because I've had to put so much in that it becomes, that's not a good deal for me anymore. How does one, A, gauge that? And B, how does a family determine, this much and no further? Like what's the process for making that happen?
Right. Yeah. So the challenge there is you're saying, well, what's the formula to do the math? And there, to some extent there is, but the challenge is, you take the absolute top students, the brightest kids, they're going to do really well no matter whether they go to college or not. I mean, the Bill Gates, Zuckerbergs of the world, right? They're going to get out there and they're going to do it. On the other end of the spectrum, there's kids that just aren't going to do well with college, without college. Maybe they're going to drop out of college and they're going to struggle. And the real challenge is the group in the middle where it's like, all right, if I can go out and get a nursing degree and a 4-year nursing degree, I can go somewhere and start at $55,000 or $60,000. There's obvious return on investment there. I mean, it is same thing with an accounting degree, an engineering degree, a lot of the hard sciences, computer science, those types of things. Then you move into the liberal arts and say, well, but a lot of times liberal arts, you're moving from a liberal art undergrad going to MBA or doctor or PA, or and then lots of different majors. So there's certainly career paths where the numbers are there. And if that's what your student's interested in, great. Like your student wants to be an accountant or go into business or engineering. It's the math works out really well. Bottom line. The question becomes, okay, well, if I'm going to go and do some sort of liberal arts, or I'm going to, I want to study theater, right? Well, if you're going to go star on Broadway, doesn't matter what you spend, but are you going to star on Broadway? Or are you going to be struggling to get the bit parts for 20 years and never, be the starving artist? So then it's like, well, how much do you want to spend? I'll give you an example. I had a dad that situation, right? His daughter was accepted to NYU, close to Broadway, in their theater department, a great opportunity. She was a bright kid. She had a lot of scholarships. So the $70,000 school was down to $32,000.
Down to?
And Dad's looked down to $32,000.
that was per year, so that I'm clear.
Right.
Okay, exactly. I just want to make sure that we're on the right. Go ahead.
State schools are 25-ish, 20. So, I'm paying 10 or 12,000 extra, but it's her dream. And my little girl's looking me in the eye and saying, "Please, Daddy, can I go?" And that's a tough place to be for most fathers.
Oh, I agree. I've got three girls myself.
And he's reasonably successful. So, he was in middle management engineering degree. He was earning into six figures. So it's not like he couldn't do it. But he was looking at it and saying, well, okay, this is the oldest of four. So if I spend $32,000 a year times 4 years times 4 kids, that's a big number. And
yes.
I want to do it, but should I do it? That's the challenge. And there's no right or wrong there, right? So, people spend money where one people say, well, it's a great way to spend your money. Other people look at that and say, well, what an idiot. Why would you spend that kind of money on a car or a vacation or a whatever it is that is your passion, right? Some people are willing to do it. Some people aren't. If college is that important to you and that's what you want to do, well, by all means. But you just have to bake it into the cake. There's a lot of parents out there that say college is our responsibility. My parents helped me through college. My goal is to pay for everything. I don't want my kids to have any debt. And that's a legitimate goal for a lot of families, and a lot of families can afford to do that. But if you're going to do that, you need to bake it into your cake and say, all right, well, now I've got to reduce how much I spend in other areas so I can have the cash flow available and or savings so that I can make that happen.
Got it. So
other parents will say, you know what, college is your problem. I'll help you borrow as much as you want, but in the end, you're going to pay it back.
Well, you're hitting on something that I was going to ask you, right? Is because we'll take the father with the 4 daughters. I mean, I've got 4 children myself, so this is a very relevant. One is in college now. I told her back when she was like 9, if you want to go to college, you're gonna pay for it, and I've stuck to that regardless, because that was just where it was. I'm a college dropout now. Mom, on the other hand, completely different story. She's got 2 degrees and all this other stuff, and my wife, anyway. But my thought process is, or at least my question is, the sacrifice parents are making in terms of if they pay for college, that doesn't that tend to rob them of their ability to plan for a retirement somehow? Or how do you put the two together? I mean, there's only so much money.
I would agree that there is only so much money, and depending on how much you earn, college is a bigger nut than otherwise, right?
Right.
But again, you take a successful middle management, they're not giving up retirement for college. They might be giving up early retirement, right? So they say, well, I could have retired at 58 if I hadn't done this college thing, but now I have to work to 62. That's a much tougher situation than someone that says, I'm planning on retiring at 68 right now, and if I pay for college now, it's going to be 74. or reduce my lifestyle, right? So again, the amount you're willing to spend on college is relative to your income, et cetera, et cetera. And it is tougher at the lower incomes for sure. And that's where you say, all right, well, if we're going to do college, maybe we figure out how to make this real estate thing work, or the side hustle, and all those teachings that maybe that's your impetus to say, all right, let's get off the dime and get to work. I do need to get some cash flow properties, or I do need to start a business or a side hustle or something, because I need another $1,000 a month to make this all come together.
Okay.
That's right.
And that's okay. So this is, now we're caught up to my life situation here, is because what ends up happening though is my children will not qualify for any sort of financial aid, based upon the size of a portfolio, and in one hand we can help our adjusted gross income look very, very low, and that's great, but that doesn't help them when it comes to it. So how does one, let me just ask the question, how does one with a real estate portfolio figure out how to do this without having to write really large checks themselves?
Right. Well, and again, I guess, first of all, when you're working with real estate, you have to realize that when you value the real estate, you're not valuing it like you are trying to get a loan and you're inflating the numbers. You want to go the opposite direction and deflate the numbers. So as an example, you're trying to figure out what the fair market value of the property is based on sale within 30 days, approaching fire sale, and then net. So after you pay for realtors and mandatory repairs and taxes and all the other things. So you might have on paper a $50,000 or $100,000 equity in a property, but by the time you deduct everything out of it, maybe it's only a $10,000 or $20,000 equity. So there, I've had situations where portfolios go from 500,000 to 100,000, and it makes a difference in need-based aid. I've also seen situations where, just due to income or cash flow, or the fact that you're going to a state school who doesn't offer much aid anyway, that in the end, there's a whole lot of people out there that are going to figure out college without need-based aid. That's the facts. You're not going to get much in aid, and the aid you do get is just going to be a loan. So now it's tax planning and, using, competitive strategies. You had a lot of real estate experience. Have you looked into buying a real rental property near the school and paying your kids to manage it and paying them well?
Yeah, paying them well. I like how you said that.
And then they pay the taxes instead of you pay the taxes.
Yeah.
And their tax brackets are zero or nearly zero, whereas yours might be a little bit higher. And they get to be a landlord, and they learn the fun of that 2:00 call. My toilet doesn't work, and they grow up a little.
Did you say the fun?
Learn something.
I like it,
but it's not something I would recommend to everybody. Right? Not everybody's cut out to be managing real estate, and certainly not managing real estate that would be college caliber real estate. Right? It's a different game. Where when you're renting to college kids, it's a different game, right?
Yes.
More likely damage will happen, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so there's strategies like that. And it doesn't have to be real estate. You could start a small business. I've had a client who bought a small display system that sold sunglasses, and the kids and dad went to the state fairs and Summerfest in our area, and they worked really hard all summer, probably 20, 25 days, where they worked from 7 a.m. to midnight selling sunglasses at these various fairs. And the kids made a lot of money. And dad somehow, by the time it was all over, paid the kids and did everything else. He didn't make any money. But the kids made enough money to pay for college. And that was, in the end, tax planning, right? He didn't have to pay the kids quite that much, probably. But he'd rather pay them, have them pay the taxes and pay for college than, have the income himself, take the tax clobber, and then pay for college with his money. So now we're getting into, right, if you decide it's going to happen, how do you do it most efficiently? And with entrepreneurs and business owners and real estate owners, there's all kinds of creative things that you can do. It's just understanding that all the creativity that real estate people already do, it's a different game when you throw in financial aid. Are you doing it for tax purposes? Are you doing it for getting more or better financial aid? Sometimes the tax benefits are more beneficial than the financial aid benefits, sometimes the other way around. So it really depends on where your income and assets are at the time and what schools you're considering and their price tag and that kind of thing.
Okay. So there was something you mentioned earlier, specifically as it related to early stage planning, that, and I'm thinking, again, you got, obviously, I think I relate almost everything to real estate because of, occupational hazard, if you will. For example, I would love to be able to go back and, buy real estate in California back in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, at that pricing and keep it and still have it today somehow. Magically managed to make that happen. Because, as measured in dollars, the price of real estate has continued to go in a north direction. My question to you is, if I know that, say there's a parent listening, or if I know that, hey, this is what's going to happen, and my, say, kid is 2, 3, 7, whatever, is there a way to pay it today so that I don't have to wait till the price gets larger, even though they're not going to go for a few years? Do you get what I'm kind of saying? I'm like, let me take advantage of the quote unquote coupon that's available now, because if I know I'm going to buy it, I might as well pay today's price as opposed to tomorrow's price. Yes.
So there are some prepaid tuition plans out there that some states still offer. Very much cool. You need to read the fine print, but
what do you mean?
Well, you need to understand the rules, because they've changed the rules pretty dramatically because the states got themselves in trouble. But essentially the way it worked was you could go out and buy, an example program, and is you buy 120 credits at today's prices. So nowadays you would put in, say, $75,000 for 120 credits. So that's a full, 4 years of college. You just bought for $75,000, and then your kid grows up and you don't spend it for 20 years from now. And theoretically the price then might be $150,000. So, you bought it at a discount today. Now, granted, you could have put that money in an investment where maybe it would have done similarly. And that's where the states got themselves in trouble. It was, they allowed you to do that, and then the prices went up dramatically. And then they realized that their assumptions were way off when they allowed you to buy them at a discount, and they lost a lot of money.
I see.
So they said, well, we can't do this anymore. We're giving today's college away at yesterday's prices, and we didn't invest the money wisely, and we didn't, the markets didn't do what we thought they were going to do, and it's ending up costing the taxpayers too much. So we're going to shut the program down, or we're going to water it down such that it's no longer as good a deal as it used to be.
Got it. Okay. Oh, I'm just looking for the ways to help everyone who's thinking of these things, because you mentioned earlier, one of the reasons people might be given a reason to start something extra, to begin to build their cash flow, as many people do, is that there's some external desire or a cause or effect that they want to see happen in their life. And college is definitely one of them that could, compel a parent to finally take life on. But no one wants to face the challenge of doing all this work and still not being able to make the hurdle, especially when it seems, at least, if I just listen to the news, the cost of education is, well, it's going up faster than just about everything else. And it's like, how do I get in front of that? Is there a vehicle that you know of that can help make that easier for people?
Yeah. Well, I guess a couple important things to remember. One is, especially at the private schools where they have the big price tags, a lot of times they're raising their price tag a lot, but they're also raising the scholarships and other things that they offer. So their net price isn't going up nearly as quickly as their top line price. Especially at schools, that aren't the top tier, right? The top tier name brand schools, the Harvard and NYUs of the world, they charge big prices and they get prices, and they get enough students that really, really want to go that are willing to pay. And so maybe those won't work out for some families. But then there's different levels, and so building your college list appropriately can save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Well, okay. So then you bring up another question then is, when when my wife goes to the grocery store, I like, certain cereals. We'll call them Frosted Flakes, actual Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. Although the store might have their own version of the store brand of Frosted Flakes. And to my wife, they're the same, but to me, not so much. My question though, in that sense is, obviously it's just cereal. It's not a big difference, but in terms of price, is the difference there between what you were calling the name brand schools versus the others, is it actually worth the extra premium?
That's the debate of the ages. Sometimes yes and sometimes no, right?
Okay.
If your goal is to be president of the United States, you probably need to go to Harvard or Yale or some other big name school, because that'll get you the context you need for your future life, and you'll grow up knowing the future senators, et cetera, of the world, and it may be a good place for you to go.
I see.
Now, on the flip side, if you're going to do an undergrad in biology and then go on and get your medical degree somewhere, in a lot of cases, does it matter where your undergrad is? When's the last time you asked your doctor, where'd you get your undergrad? For that matter, when's the last time you asked your doctor, where did you graduate from with your medical degree?
Right.
To some extent, college can make a difference, but it's not a guarantee. And I think that's something, 5-10 years ago when we were going through the Great Recession, there was a lot of college kids that were really unhappy because felt like they were sold a bill of goods, and that, you do the right things, you go to college, you get good grades, you graduate, you get a good job, life is good. And jobs were scarce and loans were high, and it didn't really pan out as what they, and today, a lot of, business people, and you and I included, probably said, well, gee, you signed for those loans. Well, that's the way it works. You pay them back when you sign for them. But they didn't really understand what they're getting into, and that generation got a little jaded as far as, it doesn't work for us like it worked for you. And the reality of it is it's because college is an opportunity, but your competition has a degree too. So it's a lot more than just going to school and getting good grades. It's what you do while you're there. Are you plugging into the alumni network? Are you working with professors and doing current research, or doing volunteer work, or whatever it is, so that when you graduate, you've got a resume that you can sell to an employer? Because, and I don't know if you hire people, but realistically, your first question is, can they do what I need done?
Right.
I don't care where you went to school. I don't care about any of that stuff until I'm confident that you'll be able to deliver on what it is I want done.
Right. And
a lot of times, if you say, well, they don't have a clue, they're wet behind the ears, they don't have any, they're too green and they can't do what I need to do, and I'm going to have to train them for 2 years. You're going to bring them on at a relatively low salary while they're learning. And that, rubs some college students the wrong way. It's like, well, I got a degree, I deserve a high salary. And it's like, well, yeah, but you can't deliver. So until you can deliver, you don't get the high salary. That's, that piece of paper isn't an automatic paycheck. And that's that disconnect that became very real as far as, so there's a number of great books out there. There's a gentleman out there, I can't really say, I think he has a podcast, but he's How to College, and his last name is Rob. I can't remember what his first name is, but I'll send you a link on that. And then there's a book, Putting to College to Work by Kat Klaus, where she talks about, as long as you're paying for college, take advantage of all that college has to offer. They've got, tutoring services, and they've got placement services, and they'll help you write a resume, and they'll help you find work for the rest of your life as part of the alumni network. There's all kinds of benefits that a lot of students don't even know they're there, because quite honestly, they're just going through the motions instead of doing it on purpose.
Got it. And was it How to College by Brian Robin? Is that what you were thinking?
Yep. that's it.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. So now, for those that have listened this far and would like to find out more about how you might be able. I mean, we've covered a lot of different examples and people and situations and questions, but there's probably still more. What's going to be the best way for them to find out more about what you're up to and maybe how they can get a handle on their own personal situation?
Right. So first step would be tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. I've got a podcast there. I've got a scholarship guide for busy parents where you can learn how scholarships work. There's a EFC calculator where you can figure out how financial aid and need-based aid work. I'm working on building a couple courses that will be available there shortly. So there's all kinds of great free information there at this point, as well as, great things to plug into like a podcast. If you're listening to this, so you understand how podcasts work. College is a process that kind of like real estate and other things where it's going to be a learning process where it's not something you're going to sit down and knock out in one Sunday afternoon. It's something where, while you're driving or exercising, if you listen to podcasts for a year, that would make sense, where you just kind of learn the lingo and learn how it works and help you formulate your opinion of, well, is college worth it? The real question isn't, is college worth it? The real question is college worth it to you? Because some people say yes, some people say no, and then how much can you afford? And what are you willing to sacrifice? And how much are you what's the balance between what you're going to pay and what the kids are going to pay? And there's all kinds of decisions. And if you've got a high school freshman, sophomore, it's certainly not too early. And if you've got a junior or senior, it's not too late either. I mean, you just need to get in there and do it. But I've had a lot of people say, man, I wish I would have done this earlier. I've never had anyone tell me, I wish, I started too early. I don't know what I was thinking.
You're right.
It's just a process. I mean, you've got a kid in college. When you went through your first visits, didn't you feel like you walked into a foreign land? Did you even participate in the visits?
Yeah. No, it had been a while because I did go to college. I just left really early. So it was like, wow, this is a trip. It felt weird. First of all, it felt like it was too soon. It just didn't feel right. But nonetheless, I'm just glad. I guess that if there's anything, I'm just glad I told her early that, look, hey, if you want to go, you're more than welcome to go, but you've got to pay for it. And that was more of a decision of, I just felt that I didn't, we shouldn't have to pay for it if she wants to go. And if she wants to go, I'm fine with her going. I just don't want to be the one paying for it. And she worked it out. She's got no loan. She's managed to get herself in and through, she's still in. She's not through yet, but and I think that worked in our favor. I don't know about the next 3 children if that'll work, but it worked with the first one. So
right, exactly, and that's another thing I see is, well, my oldest, I don't know, signed up for ROTC and did this and did that, and he got a great education at a great school and it didn't cost us anything. But number 2, is struggling, is not finding that path, and now we may have to pay. So there's just so many variables involved in college,
right?
That you just need, if you're divorced or business owner, we talked about some of those things already that completely change the game, that you need to understand that would be different. The military path, all kinds of things. So I think the one takeaway that I encourage families is start getting into it, especially if you've got kids in high school. It's going to be a process. It's going to take time. And it's going to cost you some money.
Indeed.
And the sooner you get to work on it, the more likely you'll have a positive outcome.
Indeed. So, as we end here, I got to ask you one final question. Let's pretend for a moment that there's someone who's been listening this entire time, and maybe they've gone to college, maybe they haven't, but at the end of the day, they're going, I want to do this entrepreneur thing. I want to make that happen for myself for their own various reasons. Maybe it is to actually fund their kids' college education, or who knows. But yet let's pretend that they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store, Brad, and they're ready to make the leap. They're like, hey, I want to pick out my cape and my tights and make this thing happen. However, in the back of their head, they have the voice. And I know you know the voice because you've dealt and done battle with that voice all the time. And it's that voice that comes up and says, who are you to think you could help people? And why do you think anyone's really going to buy anything from you or give you money for that idea? And for some people, they're even related to the voice. So my question to you is as follows. If you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that person listening would actually follow through and do exactly what you suggested, and they would do so in the next 24 to 48 hours, what would you suggest that they do?
Start something. Anything. Just, buy your domain and start your website if that's what you need to do. Make an appointment to look at a property if that's what you need to do. Talk to a partner or investor if that's what you need to do, but do something.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I also appreciate you taking the time. And I mean, you are in the thick of it, the battle, if you will, helping people figure out one of the more complicated subjects of our lives. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, your insight, as well as your wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Thanks for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means taming the highcostofcollege.com. You know who you are. You've been thinking about this. You're like, man, I should one day. Okay, I got to get around to it. Well, stop putting it off because as you heard him say, no one has ever said, man, I started too early. So he's talking to you. And that means go there today. And, well, do something. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.